I was excited when I heard that this passage from Matthew would be the gospel for today. This was one of the readings my sisters and brothers chose for our mother Lynn's funeral service, which was now almost 1 year ago. This passage had a context among Lynn's life events, and I'm happy to reflect further on these words. Indeed, Jesus' teaching on salt and light is likely to be familiar to many of us. Familiarity is a very good thing, but it can lead us to overlook what a startling impression Jesus made when he declared to the crowd, "You are the salt of the earth. You are the light of the world." So let's unpack the metaphors of light and salt. These are both highly valued gifts of creation and necessities of life. Salt was valued for a number of reasons. Salt made it possible for the development of early civilization because salt enabled people to preserve food, and this freed people from the dependence on seasonal availability and helped them survive dry seasons. It also meant that food could be transported and traded over long distances. Salt also enhances the flavour of food. Salt was so highly valued that it was even used as currency. I was surprised at the many values placed on salt, and the idea that we're salt of the earth might signify that we are here to preserve and enhance what is good. Light is also precious. Of course, we depend on light for life. We live in the illusion that we control light with the flick of a switch. However, through most of human history and in many places in the world today, this is not the case. Light is a common metaphor in the scriptures. Our ancestors in faith understood that it was light that had sparked creation. Light was seen to indicate the divine presence and a sign of blessing. Light also represented the wisdom of God expressed in the law. So in the words of the Psalms, your law is a lamp for my feet and a light for my way. The light would give direction. Then the prophets such as Isaiah and later Jesus himself spoke during times when they and their people were fearful, distressed, struggling under cruel occupation. In the midst of those sufferings, they announced a vision of light breaking through the darkness, a message of hope in what life could yet become. So the words, "You are the light of the world, let your light shine," could be loaded with possibilities for us. I'll just share a few that come to my mind. This could suggest, allow yourselves to live generously. Be generous with your life. Or let yourself express hope. Allow yourself to find purpose. Let yourself live with honesty and transparency. For those who need to trust us, we are an open book. There are no parts of us hidden as a dark secret. And we have someone in our lives with whom we can talk about the things that we struggle with without needing to hide anything. It could also mean allow yourself to live with joy and blessing. So when Jesus told the people, "You are the salt of the earth, you are the light of the world," it was a startling announcement of the goodness and value of human beings. John Selby Spong put it well, I think, when he said, "To give all our focus to what traditional Christianity called sinful, broken, lost, evil is both inaccurate and psychologically damaging. To focus only on this is to fail to appreciate the wonderful creation and the incredible gift, which is the human mind and what it has achieved, from great works of art, magnificent symphonies, architectural wonders, surgical and medical skills, all of which is really breathtaking. Desmond Tutu described our essential nature this way. He said, "We are made for goodness. We are made for love. We are made for friendliness. We are made for togetherness. We are made for all the beautiful things that you and I know. We are made to tell the world that there are no outsiders. All are welcome, black, white, red, yellow, rich, poor, educated, not educated, male, female, gay, straight, all. We all belong to this family, this human family, God's family." In these words about salt and light, Jesus does not appear to be making demands such as much as he is affirming our value and inviting us into something good. We are drawn to step further beyond the boundaries of our fears and to experience life more fully. I'd like to share with you the value I believe these words held for my mother, Lynn. Lynn had suffered in a number of ways during her childhood. She was only 8 when her sister died suddenly. Then only 2 years later, at the age of 10, she was sent away from her family to boarding school. Rather than provide the nurture she needed, the school seemed cold and oppressive. After a few years, Lynn's parents responded to her unhappiness and moved her to a different boarding school. Thankfully, here she found acceptance and friendship, and the motto happened to be at her new school, "Let your light shine." When I reflect on what these words meant for my mother, I imagine that at that time she had a time when she had experienced being most distressed and shamed. She found herself in an environment in which these words told her, "You have a light that is worth shining. You are part of something bigger. The world needs you as it needs salt and light." After leaving school, Lynn settled into nursing, which would give her a place in the world. She had discovered purpose in giving. School communities have a big responsibility to nurture the light in each of our children. So while this past week has seen our young people starting or returning to school, we might spare a thought for all children and those, including those among us who teach them. Returning to the scriptures, we find Jesus had more to say about salt and light. He said there are things that can render salt and light ineffective. Salt can be diluted and so lose its saltiness. Our light might be covered by something. So what are the things that cover our light or the light of others, and what dilutes our saltiness? In many cases, these things are the effects of unjust patterns of domination, such as racism, the subordination of women, the abuse of children, hostility towards people on the basis of their sexual orientation or their religion, social inequalities, bullying, war, colonisation, etc. These patterns serve to maintain the favoured position of certain groups, leaving others marginalised. And the experience of marginalisation is infused with emotions such as fear, anger, shame, and guilt. Our collective light might also be covered due to our complicity in such injustices. The story goes that the bushel won't extinguish the flame, but it renders the flame ineffectively. We can hear the incredulous tone in Jesus' voice. No one, after lighting a lamp, puts it under a bushel. At this point, I would like to consider the impact of racism and other injustices on a particular group of people about whom we are all concerned, that is, those detained on Nauru and Manus Island. This week, their plight has become part of a conversation which has again inaccurately labelled them as illegal, threatening, unwanted. Unfortunately, the conversation has been taken to a new level and it is likely plunging these people further into confusion and distress. Late last year, many of us saw a Four Corners program which gave a human face to the teachers and children at the Save the Children school in Nauru. We were touched by the children's vibrant, cheeky personalities while they expressed their enthusiasm for education, their dreams about what they might come and become and what they might achieve in the future. The school had become a safe and happy place where, despite all they had suffered and their continued trauma in detention, these young people could let their lights shine. However, teachers and children went on, as the program went on, they spoke about further traumas faced by the children and witnessed their terrible loss of hope and its impact on their physical and mental health, and so their ability to learn. One teacher said, "I've known students who over that time would say, 'I would never do that, no matter how bad this gets. I will never self-harm.' And just about every student that has said that to me has self-harmed." Another teacher witnessed in these terms, "You could see the light drain out of their eyes. You could see them go flat." The teachers working in Nauru were subject to a legal requirement that they not speak about the conditions that they witnessed. Nevertheless, they felt compelled to take that risk. The children themselves bravely shone the light through their voices in the video footage. As salt or light, human beings enable the world to see or taste things. They draw attention to important things other than to themselves. These teachers and children drew attention to the inestimable value of these children and indeed the value of every human life. In the aftermath of World War II, most countries agreed to protect refugees through the 1951 Convention and through the UN agencies such as the UNHCR. Sadly, this vision has broken down. Currently, there are more than 21 million people worldwide who have been forced to seek sanctuary. But most rich countries are treating refugees as somebody else's problem. While cutting humanitarian budgets, resources are instead spent on detention centres and other measures to close their borders. By insisting that the human community is capable of so much better than this, we seek to preserve and extend the good to be the salt of the earth. It seems to me that we need to do what we can while we're able. Returning to reflections on my mother's life, I wonder how we might continue to live meaningfully as light or as salt of the earth in the latter part of our lives. 3 weeks ago here at Pitt Street, Claire Brockett spoke to this question when she drew on her rich experience working in aged care, as well as acknowledging the strengths of many of our own Pitt Street community who are making adjustments that come with age. Father Richard Raw is a Franciscan priest who writes on this subject. He says, "There is gravitas in the second half of life, but it is now held up by a much deeper lightness or okayness. Our mature years are characterised by a kind of bright sadness and a sober happiness. There is still darkness in the second half of life, in fact, maybe even more. But there is now a changed capacity to hold it creatively and even with less anxiety. I witnessed my mother face terrible anxiety as she became aware that her days of living independently, actively and generously were threatened by losses of her ability to walk, to drive, and even to think and converse as well as she had enjoyed. She subsequently moved into aged care from her home for 4 years. I would like to tell you about a day during this time when some of our extended family travelled to visit Lynn, and Lynn had looked forward to it. We had planned to share lunch in the cafe located in the home. We'd hardly started when, in the warmth of the sun, Lynn fell asleep. With some disappointment, we took her in her wheelchair back to her room. Later, the group headed back to see Lynn to say goodbye. Lynn's sister-in-law Barb was struggling that day with her speech and walking, and she commented, "I'm not doing very well." Mum seemed to awaken from her apparent drowsiness at that moment and asserted herself with authority. "Barb, we are all doing very well." The next day when I saw Lynn, she reflected on the time together with emotion. Life is getting better all the time, don't you think? In terms of family. So yes, while it seems that getting older presents challenges in terms of one's performance, perhaps there's now a deepening sense of the importance of loving relationship, which is surely the essence of the life or the light of God. William Shakespeare said, "How far this little candle throws his beams." And in the words of Richard Raw, we are passing on the love of God from age to age. We are all sent to advance the very love of God through time and space. We are part of this divine flow. So let's live the tasty, lit up life. Amen.